Okay, another Deneb video for you. In this case, like before, I'm not going to do a complete build, but just show you a couple scenarios and some tips to improve your visuals. In this case, we'll be making stacked and clustered bar charts. I'll actually show you two different ways to make it and try to make the points in bold to you as we go. Again, if you're enjoying these videos, please subscribe to the channel or follow me on Twitter. All right, so let's talk about what's possible with just the native visuals. And so this is just some dummy data that I created, the category, product, year, and total sales. And this is what I mean by stacked and clustered. So we've got stacked bars as well as side-by-side clusters here. So we've got year as the outer context here, and then splitting it by category 1 and category 2. Then we've got tooltips there. And so this is pretty easy to make in Power BI. One of the key things there to get this kind of a view with the labels is to turn off concatenate labels to drill down so that you're at the lowest level, but then you have to sort by the concatenated columns, because if for example you sort the axis by total sales, you'll see these concatenated labels there. So which still works, but it's not as nice a look as this, right? But if you wanted, to have it sorted differently, you're kind of limited there. And then, of course, the other big limitation is you can add data values to this, but you can't add text labels. In this case, which product is on there, and maybe get rid of the legend. So that continues to be a limitation for Power BI. So there's two ways to make this with Deneb. And this first way I'll show you is actually the way I recommend. But there's a nice tip I can show you with the other way, and so that's why I'm also going to share that today as well. And so I'll just jump into the code here just to show you how this one is built. It's pretty simple. And basically with faceting, you're using this kind of syntax here on facet. There's some really good documentation examples on the GitHub site to teach you how to do this. But here we're faceting on the year, and we're just saying where to put the labels down here on the bottom, and I don't need something here that says year, so I nulled that out with the title. And then when you do the facet in this syntax, you also need to provide a spec, which is the what visual should I make at each for each of the year values. And so that's here just a simple layer where we're doing one layer for the mark, and then another layer for the text. And then there's this shared encoding area where the text and the bar have the X and Y values shared. The nice thing about Deneb too is you can specify the order, so I could easily go to ascending or descending or sort by some other field as well. And then there's sort of dedicated encoding, so the mark, the color only applies to the bar color, so that's encoded specifically here. And then the text for the text mark is off the product field, and so that only applies here. So you got shared encoding below, and then specific encoding here. So a pretty simple build, and of course you can make it look a lot nicer, but that's how I recommend making this. There is one thing to show here, and it's actually already included in this visual, but I'll go through in the next one where they're not there and add them again just to make the point of why they're needed. All right, so if you were to just start making this visual, you may, as I did, run into this kind of happen where it seems like, hey, the bars all look good, but the text labels seem to be not stacking on top of each other. They're just sort of at their value, where product E is the biggest bar here, so that one's higher than the other ones, but it certainly looks incorrect. And so I wanted to cover how to address that, and that has to do with the stack feature. And if you go to the website, you can read about the stack feature, but basically what happened in this visual is, if I scroll down here, and stack is what you can use to make like 100% bar charts where things are normalized, that kind of stuff. And there's more you can do with it as well. But basically what happened here is in this area here, where with most charts it defaults to a value of 0, so things do start stack. But in certain scenarios, the default can change, will change to null. And so that happens to be the case here, and you can certainly read the description here, but it's this third one, I believe, that's changing the default value. So if we go back, we can actually override the default and specify a stack value of 0 to get things working again. Okay, so if we go back here, and if I go down to the shared encoding, and basically we want here to put a stack value of, you put 0 in quotes there, and then we'll apply that, and you can see now things are much closer to correct. Okay, and you can also, it also accepts the syntax of true here as well, but not in quotes. So that also works. So you can use either. But that, that's not good. We need to fix that. So I want to show you two ways that you can get the text where you want it. The simpler way is just to go where the text mark is and add in this case, a dy value, because we want to move it in the y position. And I could put, say, a value of 10 here. Okay, and so then that moves it to the top of each bar. And that probably would be fine for your visual, and that would be all good. If you said, no, it's really important to me, I really want it to show up in the middle of the bar, then you can do that a different way, and you have to use what's called the band position. And so for that one, we would keep stack on for true, and then for the encoding here for the text, we'd actually have to add the Y encoding here again. And we'll do that off of the total sales. Oops. And then we would have to add a band position to indicate, and we want it halfway up, that we want the labels to go in the middle of the bar, as so. So, and you can put, 0.1 if you want it down here, 0.8 if you want it up here. And the reason we don't put that down here in the shared encoding is because it would mess your bars up too. That trust me, it wouldn't look right. So we needed to just put the band position just on the text mark encoding. All right. So that's two ways you can affect the position of text labels in your charts. All right. All right. So then the other thing I wanted to show with the facet approach is right now, all three of these have a shared y-axis, and that's probably how you'd want it. It looks good. But say you didn't, say you wanted each of these to have their own axis, then you would use the resolve functionality. And so I'll just show you an example of that, of what that syntax looks like. So when you do a facet or other kinds of charts where there's multiples, you can add this syntax down here where you add a resolve, and there's different settings there. But in this case, I'm saying, hey, I want the y-axis, and I could put the x-axis here if that was relevant to this chart. It isn't, but I want the axis to be independent, and now I see an axis for each of these things. Now, if I actually want them to have a different scale, the other thing you can do here is, instead of specifying the scale to be resolved, instead of the axis, you can do the scale. And if I do that, then you'll see that each of them has their own y-axis here, right? And so again, if you're going to show separate axes, this is probably the one you want, is to use the scale option here inside your small multiples. All right, so I'm going to switch over. And again, this facet way is probably the way I would make this chart, but I wanted to show you this other one in case the technique here helps you with a different kind of visual. And so in this case, you can also use the X offset instead of a facet to split something up by a second field. So now we've still got our chart here built by years, but then we're doing the category here. And one of the limitations with this approach is, it doesn't show a label here for the X offset field that you're using, right? And so one hack you could do, and again, I put here, I wouldn't build this chart this way. You could probably already tell it doesn't look as good as the other ones. But one hack you could do is to maybe color it by category, and then you'd have a label here which would then guide your consumer to what's going on in these. But the thing I wanted to show you is there is another way that you can do that, and it's kind of a neat trick where you can actually position text labels um, by pixel and not just by field value. Okay, and so I'm going to jump into this chart here to show you this one. And in this one, we're still using stack of 0 and band position of 0.5, just like we did before. So that applies here as well. But what we're actually doing is, um, like on the previous chart, we're using X offset to split the categories here along the X-axis. And I'm actually moving the location of the year value lower with label padding, and then I'm actually adding another text mark in between here, and then you can, well, let me just jump into the code and I'll show you. So in this case, again, I've got the same kind of stuff, the bar colored by product. We've got the text mark, also by product to give the text value. We've got the band position here to show that in the center of the bar. And then I'm also adding another value here, another mark into this layer of just type text. And I want it to be off the category field. And now in this case, instead of like binding it to the total values, total sales field, I can just use the value here and encode this by pixel. So in this case, my chart, I've set the height to be 510 at the top there. And then by putting this at 470, and I just did this change in the value to see where it looked good, I'm actually able to place the category label right here in between the year and that, and get the type of visual that I was going for with this. One thing you'll notice is that the one on the left is a little lighter in color than the one on the right. And that's because there's multiple products here, and actually this value is, in this case, there's 4 values. It's being placed here 4 times. In this case, it's being placed twice. So this one looks a little darker. So that's something to be aware of. There's probably a way around that. If you know it, please share it in the comments to help others. And I tried to overcome that just by making the opacity value of 1, but that clearly didn't do it. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that there is a way to dynamically add text labels and to fix the position by pixel instead of off of a Y value. And I think that's this last one. I hit it because it's not even worth showing, I think. So I'll stop the video there. And again, hopefully, if these are helping you, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Thanks.